Thanks for watching the video. This is Pascal for EMP Reviews. This is a review of Dune Part 2. The first half of the video is a summary of the events in the film, and the second section will be a review of the plot discussed by my friend Art and I. That part will begin at the time posted here. The opening is a narration delivered by Princess Irulan, recording an account of the brutal Harkonnen assault on the House of Atreides and how no one else in the entire universe was aware of this attack. Meanwhile, Rabban is made ruler of Arrakis by his uncle the Baron. On the way to a Fremen siege, Paul, his mother, and the rest of the Fremen they befriended kill Harkonnen soldiers and drain them of their valuable fluids. Paul insists on being one of the carriers of Jamis' body for the rest of the trip to their destination. In Erekine, Rabban kills one of his subordinates when he suggests retreating all of their soldiers out of Fremen locations, as too many of them are being lost to the brutality of the desert. Though he could not confirm Fremen assaults for the actual cause of death, as Rabban was convinced, the south was even more of an issue, as Harkonnen forces have avoided that region as it is uninhabitable. The arrival to the siege is not welcoming, as Paul and Jessica are accused of being spies. Furthermore, Paul's killing of one of their own does not help his entrance. However, others immediately believe that Paul is the savior they seek, which is the position Stilgar argues for with the elders, who are not convinced. Paul tells his mother that the propaganda that the Bene Gesserit have spread has not been successful. Not all of the Fremen believe in the prophet Lisan al-Gaib. He must convince them all in order to damage spice production in order to reach the Emperor and simultaneously revenge his father. Jamis' water is transported to one of the wells housed in the siege. The water there and in countless other places, as described by Stilgar, is sacred and not to be touched. It will aid in the bringing of a green paradise by Lisan al-Gaib when he arrives. Stilgar states that Jessica will become the new Fremen Reverend Mother, as the residing one is now dying. Refusal is a death sentence for both her and Paul. The process will fill her with a total amount of memories, suffering, and sorrows held by all mothers before her, a procedure that is lethal for men. Later, Paul is told that it's mostly southern groups of Fremen that believe in the Messiah Lisan al-Gaib, including Stilgar. During Jessica's ritual, her reluctance to drink the water of life is defeated by the dying Reverend Mother's use of the voice, forcing her to ingest the liquid. However, she is alarmed when she realizes that Jessica is with child. Stilgar believes that Jessica's survival of the process is another sign of the prophet, but Chani believes it is more propaganda initiated by the Bene Gesserit. Paul also agrees, declaring that he only wants to fight by their side, a belief that somehow even deepens Stilgar's faith in him, seeing it as remarkable evidence of humility. Later, Jessica describes that his unborn sister, Aaliyah, who apparently can communicate, and her believe that he must also drink the water of life, which would enable him to become the much-discussed Messiah, also known as the Kwisatz Haderach. As an effort to become an accepted Fremen, Paul receives his first assignment to travel a hazardous region and then return unharmed. After sunset, Chani joins him and contributes to his education. Eventually, she comes to find a certain amount of faith in Paul. In the next scene, a harvester lands near a hidden group of Fremen and Paul. They attack its soldiers and manage to destroy the machine, Paul saving Chani's life in the process. His overall performance in the assault continues to bolster Stilgar's beliefs. During the subsequent celebratory dinner, with the support of Stilgar, Paul is renamed Muad'Dib and Usul, the first name referring to a constellation and also a species of desert mouse that creates its own water. As Paul and Chani begin a relationship, they, along with the rest of the Fremen, continue their attack on spice production. As a result, the Baron grows impatient with his nephew, threatening severe punishment if producing levels are not restored to normal. Paul continues to impress, cementing his position as a Fremen when not only riding Shai Hulud, but one of grandfather size. When told of this, Jessica urges everyone near her to spread this tale, which would continue to influence all northern Fremen with the belief in Paul. She now aims to do the same in the south, where she desires for Paul's elevation into the Kwisatz Haderach to occur. Before heading south, Jessica argues with her son, supported by the opinions of his unborn sister Aaliyah. Paul declares that he is staying in this region while Jessica and Aaliyah believe that he should accompany them. Paul is furious at the dangerous messianic tales being spread by his mother, those the Bene Gesserit spread previously, while his sister believes that he is blinded by love when any romantic plans should only be aimed for future political gains. Later, for the second time, Paul has visions of him being in the south and as a result, causing famine for millions. A spice depot is destroyed, prompting Rabban and a group of his troops to aggressively search for Paul in that area. They fail from the air and on ground, with Rabban almost dying in the process. The Emperor Shaddam IV regards this scuffle with the Fremen harsher than any previous conflicts with them. His daughter Irulan suggests allowing it to turn into war, with him making an appearance as a savior. Away from her father, she realizes that the stories of the prophet were created by her Bene Gesserit religion and wonders if Paul is still alive, a suggestion that angers Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam. War and the loss of the throne would result if the other houses knew that the emperor destroyed House Atreides. Gaius aims at Vladimir's other nephew Feyd-Rautha as an alternative to Paul as a choice for the Kwisatz Haderach, a troubling proposition for Irulan, who declares that he is insane. Meanwhile, Rautha prepares himself in a bloody manner for his gladiator-style event, celebrating his birthday, while his competitors are being drugged in order to be easy targets. All except for one, that is, as ordered by his uncle Baron Vladimir. All are survivors of the onslaught on House Atreides, and all are dead at the end of the tournament, the unaffected one predictably more difficult to defeat. The Baron scoffs at the anger Feyd expresses when stating that he knew he arranged the unaffected competitor, and then offers him Arrakis as Rabban is failing there. He will become emperor if he solves the spice difficulties there, as Shaddam would clearly fall if it was revealed that he arranged the Atreides' destruction. Later, Bene Gesserit Lady Margot Fenring is sent to the nephew by the Reverend Mother. She gives him the test of humanity, as Paul received previously, also with the fatal Gom Jabbar at his neck, and also forced on him by the voice. Margot describes to the mother that Rautha is a sociopath, but that he can be controlled. She now carries his child, thus securing the bloodline, with a female as ordered by the Gesserit. Meanwhile, he is officially given Arrakis by his uncle. Gurney Halleck appears as part of a team of spice collectors when his harvester is attacked. Instead of running, unlike the others, he decides to fight and runs into Paul in a pleasant surprise reunion. Having survived the annihilation of the Atreides, he managed to get some survivors back to Caladan, but stayed in the hopes for vengeance against Rabban. Gurney urges Paul to use the religious beliefs that the Fremen have towards him to take over the planet. Paul describes his beliefs of a horrific end for the Fremen and many across the universe if he heads south, based on his visions. Seeing that Paul doesn't like the idea of raising an army in that region, Gurney reveals to him and the Fremen vast amounts of artillery that Duke Leto previously hid. This revelation occurs after a conversation where Paul assures Chani that everything he is doing is for her and the rest of the Fremen, and that he is not in pursuit of attaining power, the very word Gurney uses to describe the possession of the arsenal. Irulan adds more events in her diary, describing a new Reverend Mother from the north, now spreading word of the imminent arrival of the prophet in the south. In addition, due to the suppressing of spice production in the north, war is a very likely outcome. Jessica, and essentially her daughter also, witness a southern Fremen extracting the water of life from a very young sandworm. Jessica uses the voice to order her to provide the fluid to Paul if and when he arrives in this region, as the woman states that men do not survive the effects of the powerful solution. Another troubling vision plagues Paul, this one in a dream involving Chani. It's interrupted by Harkonnen fire, killing numerous Fremen and the sacred water supply, this strategy being a brainchild of Fade Rotha. His presence on Arrakis angers Rabban, who is quickly dismissed and humiliated when he expresses this, and then threatened with execution if he fails again in his assignment of maintaining operations. The survivors of the strike mourn the dead, deal with their wounds, and curse the cowardly attack. All of the north was assaulted. All Fremen leaders are ordered to meet in the south, and all want to meet Paul. Also, Stilgar orders Paul to speak in his place due to his injuries and his divine beliefs in him, in spite of Paul's doubt about these prophecies. In a vision that this time Paul seems to actually request, he calls to Jamis. Both he and his mother answer, and both essentially instruct Paul to drink the water of life, which would open his mind and sight. After a talk with Chani, Paul reluctantly agrees to go south. Harkonnen attacks continue, with one ending with Rotha's execution of Shishakli, close friend of Chani, and a declaration that spice production is back in full operation. Paul drinks the water of life. In the resulting visions, he meets his sister as an adult. Chani finds him with such low faculties, she believes him dead. As he is actually still alive, Stilgar's faith continues. Jessica's voice forces Chani to assist Paul when she refuses and feeds more fluids to him, causing him to wake. But she leaves in anger after delivering a slap. Paul describes to his mother his visions of possible futures at the hands of the enemy, the less numerous abilities to defeat them, and the Atreides bloodline. Jessica is Vladimir's daughter, something she herself discovered only after drinking the water of life. They are Harkonnens. Paul enters the circle to meet with the Fremen rulers. He aggressively refuses to take Stilgar's life, the traditional custom when taking the place of a leader to speak for him and his tribe. He embraces the fact that he is the one their religion describes as the Lisan al-Gaib, and shocks some members with knowledge of personal matters he should be in no position to know. These descriptions convince most in attendance that he is the one. He sees a vibrant green dune in the future, announces his father's name and ring crest to God, and declares that he will lead the Fremen to Utopia. All are thrilled at these announcements, except for the angered and doubtful Chani. A royal correspondence is sent from Paul to Emperor Shaddam, challenging him. The Reverend Mother discloses to Irulan that she advised her father to eradicate the Atreides. This house, after dozens of generations of guidance by the Bene Gesserit, had been becoming defiant, and the thought of them bringing forth the Kwisatz Haderach, the ultimate power, meant a being they couldn't control. Reverend Gaius assures Irulan that her father will lose the throne whether Paul achieves his goal or if Fade Rotha attains it. On Dune, at the sight of the Emperor coming to the planet as response to Paul's contest, Vladimir sends a message to the other ruling houses in the galaxy, declaring that their future is now at stake. Paul strategizes the entire Fremen plan of attack, using the coming storm to their advantage, while Vladimir has a pitiful explanation to offer to the Emperor as to who this individual Muad'Dib is. He is punished for not having chased this prophet into the southern regions, in spite of being convinced that the vast area is uninhabitable. He now has barely any ability to move. After Paul energizes and animates the troops, Fremen fire strikes the Imperial army, which also shutters the Emperor's location. The battle is in full swing, with Fremen-guided sandworms crushing many of the royal defenses. Paul forces his way into the Emperor's chamber and kills the Baron. While Shaddam, his daughter, the Reverend Mother, and the rest of their immediate soldiers are surrounded in this area, the battle outside continues, including Gurney killing Rabban. The other houses arrive on Arrakis. Paul swears his eternal love for Chani, and then threatens Shaddam with revealing the truth to the rest of the Imperium that he arranged the death of Leto and his house. Using the voice, he aggressively silences the Reverend Mother when she cautions him about this disclosure. A message is sent to the Imperium that any aggression will be met with the destruction of all spice fields. Shaddam's order to Paul to bow down is quickly and aggressively dismissed, but then declares that he will wed Irulan and rule the Empire, a devastating announcement to Chani. The Emperor justifies his assassination of Leto due to his compassionate way of ruling, apparently a weakness, an insult met with a challenge from Paul, demanding a fight to the death. Rotha steps forward and stabs Paul deeply during the contest, but is defeated at the end. Paul demands an official concession from Shaddam after Irulan begs for her father's life. As everyone bows in recognition of Paul and Irulan, Chani leaves fuming. Gurney conveys the response from the houses. They do not recognize his ascension to power. The Fremen board the Harkonnen ships and depart to war with the forces of the Imperium. As Jessica describes this to her daughter, the Holy War begins. Alright, thanks for watching the video. This is Pascal for EMP Reviews, and here again I have Art. I believe the last video we did was Tenet.
Yes, we did do Tenet, yeah.
Okay, so overall, first initial reaction of the movie.
Well, I have to say that this movie blew my mind away. Number one, yes, Dune Part 1 was one of those things where I actually thought they were going to put the whole movie into the first movie we saw
Part 1,
2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
And then when it ended, at the midpoint of where the book is and where the movie ends in the first part, and it said Dune Chapter 1 or Part 1, then I said, oh, there's going to be a sequel, but they had not greenlit it.
Yeah,
and then right. Based on the success of Dune, which, let's face it, it was absolutely done very, very well.
Yeah.
But Dune Part 2 was done astronomically much better, to the point where I even have to say this must have been their plan from the very beginning. They must have invested so much in the first movie, knowing that they were going to invest so much in the second movie, that by the time that they finally got it greenlit, the Part 2, they already had all the research, they already had everything practically down to where they can just, I think, concentrate on the storytelling and the visuals and the aesthetic of how the story should go from that point on. And if you think about it, I think that it is kind of like a rival to The Empire Strikes Back. You know how The Empire Strikes Back is sometimes a much better movie than Star Wars?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
But there's a huge argument about how it's not, and I'm thinking, no, it's just more artistic. It's just more focused. Empire Strikes Back is that one particular episode of Star Wars saga where it is so much better than all the others that we cannot stop thinking about it. And on this particular point between Dune's Part 1 and Dune's Part 2, I really cannot stop thinking about Dune Part 2. It is much more emphasized and much more well-rounded, but to the credit of Part 1.
Yeah. It was kind of weird with Part 1 because I agreed with the average person who wasn't aware with the lore, because I did hear in the theater people were saying that's it when the first half cut off.
Exactly right.
And I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, well, according to the book, this is a good spot to end, but I get it.
Oh yeah, I get it too.
And then in the bathroom, I think I mentioned this with whoever I did the first movie with. I think it was Mario and Ernest. Somebody in the bathroom afterwards said, I wish this movie had subtitles. And
wow.
But on the one hand, the weird galactic terms are a little confusing, and on the other hand, the Asian actor has an accent. You know, and it's like, yes, dude, really?
The very first shot, or the very first scene of Dune Part 2, which, if you think about it, is between the Emperor and his daughter.
Oh yeah, okay.
But then it transfers to the surface of Arrakis, where they are, Paul wakes up. And he's being told to be quiet because they're being hunted. The Fremen that he's hanging out with, and they're all about to take back this body that he had killed in the last movie.
Yeah.
And he's being educated. He's being told be quiet because there they are, the Sardaukar. And then you see this wonderful moment where they're just ambushing the Sardaukar, and it's adventurous, and it's very, very like, oh, this is what the last movie was sort of missing, even though it did have some of that. But it starts it off like that. And throughout that, at that point, the movie is an entire adventure.
Yeah.
It's literally an entire adventure, really.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Objectively, I I did like the movie. I thought it was exceedingly well constructed, incredible character development, fantastic visuals.
No doubt.
Something else we'll focus on, and et cetera, real top notch. Like subjectively, I hated it.
Well, I can understand how people just Dune is not their cup of tea, but at the same time, I understand that there's so much more to it that either strikes you as correct and right and perfectly exactly the way you think it should be, and then there are conversations between characters that you really don't care about, or you don't want them to be around, or you sort of wonder, they could have done this, they could have done that. But you sort of like have to surrender to the movie. Yeah. And yes, even at the end, I thought to myself, that I could have done without. You know who I could have done without? I could have done without Christopher Walken playing the Emperor. Okay. I think he was miscast in that role.
Okay, I guess we could start there. Okay, so the first problem with Christopher Walken, and it's like I've years ago I abandoned what seems to be the average audience response, which is if you see an actor having a bad performance, even though he had phenomenal performances elsewhere, if you see him in a movie and he has a bad performance, you blame him for it. I'm past that. I'm like, it's either bad casting or the director is not pressing the actor for a good performance, because one of the things I was really impressed by is Zendaya's performance in this one, because she was intense. Because in the first movie, like near the end, when Paul's about to fight Jamis, Javier Bardem and Zendaya are just no life whatsoever in their performances. I can believe that Denis Villeneuve allowed that to happen. That was bizarre to me, because in Blade Runner, like Blade Runner 2049, even though the attempt to sell the love that Deckard had for Rachel, even though they tried to do it, it didn't kind of work. But the pain in his face worked.
Yes.
But in here, Christopher Walken. Whoever's to blame for it, there was a bad performance there. Because the Emperor in the 1984 movie, that guy was nuts. I mean, he's like, we're doing genocide.
And it's kind of weird because, as many characters as there are in the Dune saga, yes, you have to, if you want to cast a well-known actor to play that role, fine. But the thing about it is that the Emperor is a very minute character in the book. And then in the movie, he's just as minute. But I just hate the fact that they had to cast a great actor to just stand there and say one or two lines.
Yes.
It's kind of like...
the reputation I am hearing, I mean, what the hell do I know? It's just YouTube that I'm listening to. But apparently, from what has been told in some interviews, is that they really arranged and organized everything before shooting.
Oh no!
That's why the movie is as tight as it is, and that's why the special effects are amazing. And one thing that one of my points was the first thing that sold me when I was watching the movie is the Harkonnen people, like you were talking about the first scene that they killed. The suit was just beautiful. And then I'm watching this, and next thing I know, the guy's floating in here. I'm like, oh shit!
And it looked like they were underwater when they did that. It literally looked like they just started to like float up to the surface of the
effortless.
Water. And it looks so simple. But you know what? I was at the theater when that happened, and I literally heard like this like little hush, like around the theater from the people who were reacting to that, because it was such a simple little trick, but it looked so futuristic.
Well, I mean, you just the guy was just walking. Next thing you know, he's floating.
And he's using the rocks to guide him up the cliff. Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, wow, why? How could they have never thought of doing that before?
Well, what's his name? John Boyega? Yeah, when he first saw the trailers for for Dune Part 1, he started screaming. It's like, how come we couldn't have anything this cool for Star Wars?
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. I just want to emphasize. There's a final shot of Shani, the Zendaya character, walking away at the conclusion of the movie, and in the distance you see all of the ships of the Lance Rat. They're out in the distance in the sky.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they are so enormous because they are so far back, and you can still see them in the skyline, which means that these ships are like
they almost
maybe
look like stars in the skies, basically.
Yes. Yeah. Now, if Star Wars wanted to be like that, it could.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that because we're sort of indulged with the Star Wars facts, you sort of realize that movies are going to look fake. This particular movie, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, have this National Geographic kind of look to it.
Yeah.
That it looks like they actually went to a real world, even though they went to Morocco.
Yeah.
They went to Saudi Arabia.
Yes, yeah. It did have that kind of grounded feel to it.
It did.
But one of the criticisms I have is the ornithopters looked amazing. The refinery.
The Harkonnen spice harvesters?
Yes, the harvesters.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Those things looked amazing.
They did.
But the Bene Gesserit spaceship in the first movie, the person of the change, I don't know what the title is, but when you came down to
make
offer
the
the fiefdom,
announcement.
that and the spaceship that the Emperor came in, actually the spaceship the Emperor came in looked like one of those balls from Pokemon.
Right.
And, and it's it's too rudimentary.
And
because back like a million years ago when I used to watch Tripods and Blake 7 and all that stuff, and I was reading. I'll show you this later on today. In my mind, like there's an artist called Fernando Fernandez who's part of the heavy metal crew of artists. Mm-hmm. He did this insanely beautiful epic called Zora, and there were some weird kind of designs for spaceships and all that stuff, and Dune in a sense is the live action version of that.
No kidding.
Except when it comes with spherical spaceships, which is just too rudimentary to me.
I remember that in the first book of Dune, not the first book, but the book Dune that I read, and I remember reading it back when I was in high school, right after the first movie had come out.
Everybody I knew in high school had that book.
Had that book. And I went back because I wanted to read the details of how, and then when you read the book, you realize nothing is actually described. There are like bits and pieces. It says that it's rounded or it's this, it's that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually describe what the technology is. And I did remember that it said that the Emperor spaceship was like a golden pyramid.
Okay.
And so in the movie, the David Lynch 1984 Dune, that kind of like was his ship was made to look like that.
Okay.
Now the fact that this new ship in this new movie comes down and I see it, and it just looks like not only does the Emperor bring his entire planet with him, but he brings his entire army with him.
Yeah.
So like the ship has got to be big and spherical and everything, and you almost have to wonder. After a while you start realizing that there must have been some kind of like concern by the production designers and the people who made this movie into thinking, well, how would he bring all of those people into a planet? Well, his ship will probably be shaped like a planet. It would probably also be polished. So when you see it, it's like this beautifully, it's like the bean, the Chicago bean.
Yeah, and I've never been fond of Star Wars.
Yeah, and it either hits you well or it doesn't hit you well. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was Attack of the Clones, but there's one of the spaceships that is completely reflective.
Oh yes, I do remember that. The Queen's ship. Yes,
it looked like a letter opener, basically, man.
Can I ask you? Did you ever get to see the documentary of Aronofsky's Dune about the possibility of the movie having been?
I have it on Blu-ray. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you think about it, they took all of those designs and they did make it into what essentially was a mini Dune, which was they used all of those costumes and the production design for a little bit of Flash Gordon in 1980.
Oh, okay, all right.
So if you think about it, that's what we would have gotten if they had made Dune in the 1970s.
Okay.
When they made Dune in 1984, it was done with a serious artist in mind who had not really developed a cinematic sort of like palette yet, and this was David Lynch.
Okay.
He just decided to put all this weird stuff into the screen, not realizing that all of it was going to be influential years later.
Okay.
And eventually, I don't know how much of that movie, 1984's Dune, do you think was carried over to Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 that you think, they must have... Because the only thing that I see as an influence, the only thing that I think as an aesthetic that they carried on from that movie to this one are the still suits. They look like the way that Rob Ringwood designed them back in 1984.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see much of connection with what was it? Mobius was one of the artists, because in the Jodorowsky Dune documentary, he had Mobius do a million designs and everything, and for this the designs and the storyboards.
It would have been really difficult to make this movie look any more science fiction-y than it was, because if you had made it more science fiction-y, let's say, it would have looked like all of the other movies that we had seen before. And let's face it, this movie is unlike anything I've ever actually seen.
Well, it's I think it was good, like it absolutely obviously felt because there's one thing I definitely picked up on growing up in Montreal is, there's a vast difference between European graphic novels and American comic books, and when you look into the live action version of science fiction from Europe, we're looking at Valerian and Fifth Element.
Yes.
And I can't understand the love for either one of those movies. I really don't like that style. The only time that I have been in love with it is there's one of my favorite artists in the world. Well, three of them. There's Jeff Darrow from The Matrix, and then there's H.R. Giger, and the other one is Enki Bilal, and they used I believe it was the Nicopol trilogy as a reference point for the Chinatown in Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner. So
I would have loved if Devenue had kept some of the aesthetics that Giger had designed for Dune.
Yeah, what they did is they essentially did one of the Alien, because they grabbed like a large, except for Chris Foss, they grabbed H.R. Giger and a bunch of other producers from the Jodorowsky Dune film into Alien.
Wow,
that's exactly. Because anytime if you watch anything that's extensive about Jodorowsky Dune,
it's about
they go into how that
things,
the cancellation went into Alien and stuff like that. Okay, all right. So talked about Christopher Walken. I don't know, man. I'm still split on the unborn Aaliyah.
Okay, now I think that's actually a very good idea. I think that in the book and in the movie, the 1984 David Lynch movie, Aaliyah is born because Lady Jessica and her husband Duke Leto, they have sex on Arrakis when they arrive on the planet, but she ends up pregnant, when the Harkonnens attack and destroy her entire house, her entire family. And when she's in the desert with Paul, she doesn't know she's pregnant. Paul doesn't know she's pregnant. And this is in the book. And then suddenly she takes the water of life, and suddenly they say, "Oh my God, she's pregnant!"
Yeah.
And now this baby is born as a full Bene Gesserit.
Absolutely.
And she becomes something of an abomination because she sort of like has powers that wield and right.
She scares some of the Fremen because of that.
And she's the one that I think kills the Baron Harkonnen.
Yes.
Now, of course, they take her out of this, and instead she just becomes this voice, this sort of inner voice, sort of like
an argumentative voice.
Yes, an argumentative. Yeah. But you see her, and you see that there is sort of like a connection to if there's going to be a next movie. But I actually would prefer it if there wasn't a next movie, because what I actually like and I appreciate is the fact that they changed it enough so that there is still some conflict and still some resolution and some argument between an inner voice that Paul can have. In fact, when you watch the movie, you see how his mom, Lady Jessica, is taking advantage of the fact that everybody thinks that he's the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah. So going back to the unborn Aaliyah. So I'm kind of split on that, and it brings into my other problem with the movie, which is I didn't like the fact that Paul, Jessica, and her sister should have been a pack. The ire between them was disconcerting, and to make it even I don't know if the term is frightening, but when Jessica is about to go south, Paul just finished yelling at her, she is not even affected by the way he feels, because she gets up and she goes, we're going south now, and she says, all of us will be waiting for you down, and it's like, it's as if she was referred to like demons, like legion, we're many or something, so it makes her feel, I like listening to what Comic Book Girl 19 was like, because I went through the video, like I said, I went through the video, and also thinking back at the original 1984 movie. And granted, it's nothing compared to what Lynch wanted to do, but she's practically demonic here,
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. I wish there were more of a unified team, and the whole thing with the division between the South and Northern Fremen, I didn't like that either.
Well, if I can say something. All right, so I'm a huge fan of Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay.
And if you ever watch that movie, it's historically it was about a British officer who goes and he deals with the Bedouins out in the desert. And believe it or not, the Fremen in the movie were based by Frank Herbert, who wrote the book, on the Bedouins.
Okay.
And so they have an ability to live out in the desert, survive there for months and for years. They make a livelihood there.
Okay.
But they were a people that were not united because they were pretty much taken advantage because of their lands, because of the wealth of oil that they had, and the entire world sort of like took over them, is what happened.
Okay.
And they were oppressed by a company called OPEC, which was an oil company.
Oh, no kidding.
Frank Herbert, when he wrote the book Dune, he pretty much decided to take the subject of oil and instead turn it into spice. He turned the Bedouin into the Fremen. And then he pretty much took all of these oil companies, he turned it into the Chog, right, exactly. Yeah. So that was the lance right. All of that is detailed, and it's actually influenced by all of the stuff from the 50s and the 60s, which was essentially what happened historically.
Okay.
So you see all of that, and you start realizing that it has emphasis on realism. And one of the things that I appreciate about the movie was that there was an emphasis on this cultural differences between the Fremen. Like they were the Northerns who argued with the Southerns. Fremens.
Yeah.
And Javier Bardem, he plays Stilgar. And at one point, they asked him, "Oh, Stilgar is from the South?" And they said, "Yes." Didn't you hear his accent?
His accent, yeah.
And so he has this reaction where it's beautiful to see him sort of like react to it. And you see all the other Fremen reacting to it, arguing about it, and not believing in it, and then believing in it, becoming converted to him. And then at the end, they're all raising their knives for him.
Yeah, yeah.
It sort of like got to that, but only because they showed the differences between all of them arguing that, saying, no, he can't be. But then when they see that he is, they're like, yes, he is the one. Let's follow him to the ends of the earth.
Yeah, I think, so they did say that he had a Southern accent.
Yeah.
And I believe... that I'll look it up, but Chani was saying that you are more likely to believe that Paul was the Messiah if you were from the South. I'll check on it. I think that was the situation.
And did you notice that Chani is the most non-believing of all of them? Because at the end, she doesn't want him to be this guy. She doesn't want him to be she wants him to be his. Like, just stay in this world, be with us. And he's like, I have to go and fight. And he's like, but you told me that you were going to be with me. And he's like, yeah, I have to break that promise to you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but I'm a god. That's what I have to do now.
Yeah. Okay, so I do recall, Stilgar was actually still, if I'm correct, Stilgar was practically from the get-go ready to worship Paul as the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came into the seats, half of the Fremen there were like, Paul and Jessica were spies. Mm-hmm. Now, for one thing, my reaction to, there's too many changes.
Yeah.
Like you did find reasons to justify the division of the South and North Fremen. That's another thing I myself think would have been better if there was a unified force like in the first movie, but whatever. I would like to watch the Sci-Fi Channel first because that's supposed to be really good, but the costumes are so goofy.
Yeah, I do remember the sci-fi Dune.
People liked
it was
it.
called Frank Herbert's Dune, and I remember it came out in December of 2000. I remember. Yeah, it's a television movie.
Yeah, very low budget.
Very low budget. It's not even. I mean, even the ornithopters are just kind of. And I'm kind of like thinking, I gave that credit because it was very accurate to the Frank Herbert thing.
Yes.
But you see, if you actually put a lot of accuracy into, let's say, this project, David Lynch movie had a lot of accuracy in it, a lot of Frank Herbert accuracy in it. And it sort of like made it legendary, but at the same time, you have to understand that you have to make a movie for people who are not fans of Frank Herbert. Yeah. So they have to take stuff out and they have to dumb it down and simplify it. And to some extent, I think that they did a good job, but only because they needed to build up the audience that, like if you have 50 million Dune fans, you want to have 250 million people go see the movie Dune.
Well, that was the brilliance of the first wave of Marvel films, because they kept to the lore to a good degree. They obviously didn't do one-to-one comparisons, translation.
Yeah.
But they did it enough, and magically by adhering to the comic book fans, the average person had a good time with it. And of course, a different story now. The Marvels, but that was a fantastic formula, and that's one of the reasons I have a problem with this movie. There's just too many changes. Two things that I don't know why they changed. In the first movie, it's like, okay, I see this as a mistake and as something that, as a person who is not familiar with the lore, which probably was very confusing. So they're in the ornithopter, they just escaped, and so Kynes like hop into this thing. There's only 2 spots. I can't go in there with you. So they go into the sandstorm, and Paul lets go of the controls.
Yeah.
And then starts going to the visions, and I'm like, that's when the movie goes into genre, as opposed to just storytelling.
Sure.
So I don't know why they did that, because as far as I understand it, because I was just, again, watching the videos, like, thank God for Comic Book Girl 19, because I think that scene in the book is actually the visions Paul got, because when they got to the Fremen Siege, Stilgar and Jessica are having a discussion. Paul is having his first meal.
Yeah.
I believe, I'll check. I believe that's what happens in the movie. It definitely happens in the book, because that's when, because he's eating spice-soiled food, he has a big vision.
Exactly.
So I think that's what for some stupid reason, that's what he was going through in the first movie while flying. So I'm like, I don't see the intelligence of doing that.
I would have loved to have had that happen to him when he was writing the Sandworm.
Oh yeah.
If he, first of all, that sequence is brilliant.
Yes,
I love that. If you love that sequence for
absolutely
that alone, then yes, because they did it not only right, but it would have been also great if he was doing all of this, sort of like maybe suffering through trying to do it, and then suddenly having this vision, and suddenly realizing, oh, this is what I need to do. Yeah. This is like, maybe he's communicating with the spice, or communicating with the sandworm, or communicating with himself. But if he had had something like a vision as he was doing this, maybe it would have played better. Well, but yes, you're absolutely right. For him to have the vision while he's flying,
and he lets go of the controls,
Even though you could, maybe Devin knew was saying, well, he let go of the controls and let chance take him where he was. Yeah, bullshit. Come on. Paul, from the even in the book, it's not until after he drinks the water of life that he realizes, yes, I am the Kwisatz Haderach. But he doesn't argue that he's not the Kwisatz Haderach like he does in the movie. In the movie, he literally is telling people, hey, I'm not this guy that you say that I am.
Yeah.
And then at the conclusion, when he says that I am the Kwisatz Haderach, it played a little false to me, because I would have loved to have had him be a little bit more like, no, I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
I wanted Paul Atreides to say, no, I don't want to be this.
Well, he kind of did, because because when Stilgar was arguing with Shani, and they both had their group of people separated, and she was saying this is just propaganda, he interrupts them and he goes, I'm not the Kwisatz Haderach. I just want to fight with you guys. I want revenge against the destruction of my house and the murder of my father. So he does, and the humble that humble statement somehow instills Stilgar's belief even more.
Yes.
So there is a humble thing, but like the thing that I think is a plot hole personally is practically like there's practically no time difference between Paul saying to Chani, I'm not going to change, I'm not out for power, this and that, and then a few scenes later he's addressing the Fremen people in that huge meeting and saying no one can defeat me, and it's like Mr. Megalomaniac. I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
And it is true. When that happened, that's the reason why I would have loved him to have said, I don't want to be this, but then suddenly saying, I have to be this.
I do think there could have been room for him being more humble about accepting that role, because they actually showed it when he told one of the Fremen information that he is in no position to know about the guy, and because the guy heard but it was extremely personal information that only someone who has like supervisions or whatever would be able to know. And because of that, the guy was like, well, okay, you are the one, and people bowed down, and of course Chani didn't, and that's another thing that I didn't like about the movie is I like the fact that Chani Zendaya has a much more powerful performance, but you could count on one hand how many times she smiled in the movie. She's like always arguing and always screaming, and at the end, what was I'm gonna have to check, but what was the end? Was it Jessica saying it's the Holy War, or was it Chani leaving with the angry face?
It was Chani leaving in the angry face. In fact, the very last shot is her face.
The other thing is one of the things that Hollywood is trying to do very often and does effectively, and Blade Runner 2049 is a perfect example, is a lot of times they're doing with lore material also. They're creating storytelling that is designed to drain you of life. Because I was counting the days for Foundation TV show to come out, and the first episode delivered like in every single level that I wanted. I mean, the concept of predicting the end of a galactic empire through galactic mathematical equations was just beautiful. Jared Harris, fantastic. And every fucking episode right after that either directly or indirectly destroyed that first episode.
Not only that,
I will freely admit that the end, the finale of season 2 was phenomenal, but again, I wanted to kill myself after watching it, man. Oh yeah, this was still a fantastic point for me. The gladiator scene, man. Jesus.
Yes.
I remember I was watching it, the next thing I know, this guy like a couple seats next to me, once the fighting started, the guy leaned forward because he was just mesmerized, and that's, I think, the hair in the back of my mind, and I was like, okay, we got our new Star Wars, and then a 4, unfortunately, it deteriorated as people were like, just crap, all the stuff that I didn't like about the character development, but up until that point, I was sold, and I just went through another one of Comic Book Girl 19's videos, and this one discussed the actual events of the Gladiator, and it's a lot more complicated. But there was some wrangling as far as people being drugged and all that kind of stuff. But what they came up with for the movie, fantastic. Like how one guy was not drugged and how that was arranged by the Baron, and that all of that was just beautiful, including the incredible costumes of the guards that were trying to slow down the guy that was not
heights in their faces.
Yes, it was like Harley Quinn or something. It was
and I saw that, and it was one of those things where you sort of like lean forward, like you said that your friend did, and you sort of like say, "What is that?" You want to study what they're doing because you know it's going to have something of a payoff.
Yeah.
And when Fade Ralston basically tells them, "No, hey,"
he yelled at the guy.
"Yeah, get the fuck away from me! I'm doing this. This is my show." It's like, you can see. But they showed how deranged he was when he was slicing the throats, testing out with the knives.
Yeah.
And yeah, you see that, and remember that there was at one point he kills someone, and he commands him, give that to my pets. They haven't eaten all day.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's talking about these 3 cannibal women that he has on the side.
They when I think it was the first, because he kills 2 people.
Yeah.
So I think it was when the first one or second one falls over. I don't know. The 3 of them, those 3 girls, like smiling and lean into the fall of the cadaver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Enjoy.
If the Harkonnens were, I mean, I would have preferred to have had more of the Baron in it, but Fade Ralsa was the epitome of what the Harkonnens were.
Well, he runs Caracas, so he's definitely the focus point.
And Raban sort of suffers through this. He's a drunken idiot. You know, it's like, even though the characters, I remember the characters from the books, but even in this movie, they were well developed to the extent where what they had screen time on was enough for me to say, oh yeah, that's who they are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even the Baron himself.
And I did not know why it was black and white until
it was explained, right?
When did I find out that it was the weird sun?
It was
that removes color. I can't
after the movie came out. My brother leaned over to me and says, "Is the movie in black and white?"
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I wonder what happened there. And then it was explained that that's just the black and white sun of the
sun
removes
planet. Color. Yeah,
and suddenly I thought to myself, of course. And like I should have known that, but no, come on, somebody had to explain it to you. But isn't it great that that's what they chose to do?
Yeah, it's one of those things that makes you want to see it more than once.
But beautiful production design.
Absolutely. Like, what was it? Okay, so like the cool thing with Denis Villeneuve in these movies is, even if a character appears on screen for a short amount of time, you could tell the design took a long time to put together.
No doubt.
Like we just discussed the guards that were slowing down the combatant, that with the weird Harley Quinn outfit, and the suits at the beginning. The Harkonnen suits were beautiful, and the hazmat suits in the first movie, like when they're cleaning up the room and they had this weird...
And they look up and they see the Baron.
The suits were beautiful.
And the thing is that they were just on screen for like maybe 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
And I said, I want more of that, please, by all means,
Well, that's like real quick. I won't dwell into it too much, but like I am obsessed with a movie called Franklin. Like visually, it is my favorite movie in the world, because part of the movie, unfortunately, a very short part of the movie, is in this fantastic gothic world.
No kidding.
Costumes, incredible architecture, statues everywhere. As much as I love all of the scenery and the costumes and everything, the editing is perfect because they don't dwell on those scenes too long.
Yeah.
As much as you want to keep looking at it, just like the suits in Blade Runner, in Dune Part 2 and Dune Part 1, the editing is just enough. Okay, so you mentioned that when she became the Reverend Mother, when Jessica became the Reverend Mother for the Fremen, that they found out after she drank the water of life that she was pregnant. Now, at least looking at what was happening in the movie, she didn't want to drink the fluid because she didn't know what the hell it was. And I'm trying to think now if I'm giving myself my own answer, because logic to me dictates that I'm pregnant, but there is room to argue that she was forced to drink it by the voice before she could say that.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the movie, the very first shot, or at least one of the very first things that you see the embryo.
Yeah.
And you see that the embryo is still in her belly, and she's asking questions. And at some point, Paul, before he drinks the water of life, before he actually has any belief or non-belief about his being the Kwisatz Haderach, he asks his mother, how is she doing? And she says, wait, how did you know that I was pregnant? What are you talking about? I don't know what
I think that's in the first movie.
No, actually, that's in the second movie. That's at the very beginning of the first movie. That's at
when
the
he
start.
says that he knows she's pregnant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. She asks, how is she doing? Right.
I look at it because I thought it was... I'll look at it, but I thought it was like after he almost died because he was hallucinating when he came close to a worm. Like first when his father was flying the
exactly.
ornithopter. Okay, so he almost died, and then he goes back home and his mom is coming to see, are you okay?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well, there's no
I
question
thought
that the spice was influencing him, was changing him. And
But
he
I
had
thought it
this
was that
instinct.
scene that he said, "I know you're pregnant."
Yeah, they were. I mean, actually, I think you may be confused with the David Lynch movie, or you may be confused with just the way that you recall the first and the second movie.
Okay.
But the detail is there.
Yeah.
But at some point, yeah, Paul has this instinct that she's pregnant, and she either knows or she doesn't know, because when she drinks the water of life, let's face it, even as a Reverend Mother, she may have said, "Oh, I can't drink that, I'm pregnant."
Yeah.
Or I don't want to harm her.
Yeah,
or I
because,
do want to drink it because I know that it will do this to her. Maybe she did that on purpose. Who knows?
Yeah, well, the way the movie delivers that to us, I'm assuming that because the older Reverend Mother who's dying freaks out.
She does. She freaks
and
out.
she's like, she's pregnant.
Yeah.
I think that that's supposed to make us also believe that Jessica, like if she had the opportunity, would have declared that as justification for not drinking this liquid. So I don't think there was any, as conspiratorial as she was.
Yeah.
I don't think she was trying to deliberately affect her unborn daughter. You know,
but you do see that because she becomes the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother for the Fremen,
yes,
for the planet Arrakis.
Yeah.
So essentially, she really
no. For I'm not even sure if it was all of the. I guess it was all of the northern Fremen, right? Or was it just those guys?
Yeah, for the northern Fremen, and she comes all the way to the south, and she sort of like unites the north and the south for her son.
She went down there to orchestrate her son becoming the Kwisatz Haderach.
Exactly. Let's face it. The only way that you can actually unify a planet is by making all of the countries say, "Yeah, that's the guy."
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody in this movie was plotting.
Yes.
Even Paul at some point.
Yeah. Okay. I did mention how if drinking the water of life is something great for Paul, and Jessica is trying to entice him to do it, why does she look demonic when she's trying to convince him to do it? That really, it's another one of the it goes right into the excessive nihilism that's in this movie.
True, but at the same time, I sort of wonder if it has to explain to some extent his behavior at the end. Why he would rather go to war with the Landsrat instead of staying in Dune and being with Chani. But the thing about it is that the whole movie is about how Iraq is the source of this one thing that the entire universe needs. So, okay, the story is not about the control of that. It's more about this guy realizing that he's kind of like a deity, that he's like a guy that can influence the people of this planet to now go to war with the rest of the universe. Right?
Yeah.
And the last thing that I want to see is somebody like go to war, especially when it comes to a hero. But at the same time, historically, that is what happens. If you own or you are the source of this thing that everybody wants, you're going to either fight them or you're going to have to join them. And Paul Atreides, at the conclusion of this movie, asks them, "Hey, you're either with me or you're against me." And when they say, "Hey, we're against you," he says, "I'm going to have to fight you now." And I'm going to do it.
Well, yeah, but it's like I'm trying to think, because again, without going to all the politics and everything, and one of my justification for hating the insane amount of nihilism in Hollywood is the fact that my explanation for it is that I could take that kind of stuff in horror films.
Yeah.
Because my favorite horror film is Silent Hill, and that's as nihilistic as it gets. But I don't think this insane level of negativity is good storytelling, which definitely goes into my two different ratings at the end when we get to it. And it is so far gone now that even in some horror films, it's taken into the stratosphere. And the prime examples are Hereditary and Midsommar. I mean, I never thought the crazy thing that with all that happens in Hereditary, the most disturbing thing for me was I never thought I would see a headless body float in the air.
Yeah, there was that moment, right? Yeah.
That and in Midsommar, like they burn the guy alive at the end while smiling. And the worst thing that I'm surprised, I hate to sound, hopefully I won't sound like a wimp here, but they gut basically like the tourists.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it was an Asian woman. First of all, the scene where the guy jumps off a cliff.
Yeah,
you've seen it.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen it. Yeah.
So not only is that apparently it wasn't gruesome enough for Ari Aster, the guy fails in his attempt to kill himself. So here comes Harley Quinn with a hammer, to finish off the job.
Yeah, finish off the job.
And I'm like, so the Asian woman was like, I think one of the tourists was Asian. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so she grabs the bags and I can't remember because what I remember is that they wanted to leave and they couldn't get a vehicle, whatever. But all I know is she wanted to leave. And if memory serves, the very next scene, she's in a wheelbarrow and they gutted her and put like flowers in her face. I'm like, what?
They did, fuck? Yeah. You sort of like, what? That's what happened to her.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. I'm like, and it's like, okay, I'll give Ari Aster all the accolades he deserves for being a character development artist,
sure,
and story artist. But I'm sorry, Hereditary is.
Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Baby, and Midsommar is Fisher King.
Yeah,
basically. So he's not. I don't see him as being creative. Everything else about his work is fantastic. The guy the kind of a little bit same kind of argument can be said with Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan did basically did Oculus, and he did.
He's not the guy that did Midnight Mass. And,
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Midnight, so perfect example, Midnight Mass, because he, as good as he is, he goes into the nihilistic crap too. Because at the Midnight Mass is fantastic.
It is,
and with this guy who basically teams up with a demon, is gut wrenching, and the woman dies at the end. And I'm like, I don't care about these two kids that made it out in the end. I wanted her to survive. She doesn't deserve this, I will say that I'm inconsistent because Oculus that he did a million years ago in the same vein of nihilism works for me. He did Dr. Sleep, which is phenomenal.
Oh, he did Dr. Sleep. You gotta be kidding me. Yeah, that movie in particular was a sequel to The Shining.
Very good respect to the book and the movie at the same time, which is fantastic. But I am now watching for the second time The Fall of the House of Usher.
Is that's the Netflix one, right?
Yes.
And that's also done by Michael Flanagan. That's also done by him,
yes,
right?
that's why I brought it up, yes.
And that is isn't Mary McDonald's in that one?
Yes.
And I hear she does incredible work in that. She plays
everybody's fantastic.
Really? I gotta watch that. Did you like Timothée Chalamet's performances, Paul?
I mean, it's fantastic. It's just that I'm just disturbed by his megalomaniac aspect of it. But no, it's fantastic. It's definitely, the performances in there were 10 times better than the first film. Yeah.
Well, what kind of I know that the actor is 29 years old. He's about to be 30 years old. But in the movie, I think he was cast because in the book, Paul Atreides starts off as a 15-year-old kid and sort of 10 years later winds up this 25-year-old young guy about ready to take over the universe. Timothée Chalamet just looks 15 to me the entire time.
All right, cool. That was a point I didn't think I'd go over, but thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, it's too thin.
And that point where he's where he puts the signet ring on, I am Duke Leto Atreides. He says all this.
God.
He still comes across as this little kid.
Yeah. Now.
I know that he put all his life and effort into the performance, but after a while, you sort of say, I would have preferred if he had been a much taller, much more muscular guy.
This guy on Facebook, I got into it with him, and he said that's more accurate. So I'm like, considering my complaints about that, I guess I'll have to live with it. Although Kyle MacLachlan's sure looked a lot better.
No, I agree.
Yeah. And I think this might be a stretch, but I think it is, again, Hollywood mandate, and if I could use that word. Because look at the last Batman, like Christian Bale had to lose weight because he was too big when he showed up on set.
Yeah.
And now we have a Gen Z Batman, essentially. Anyway, okay, we better get into ratings from 0 to 10. What's yours?
Okay, well, I can't remember if we did a rating for Dune Part 1, but I would have to give Dune Part 1 from 0 to 10. I would have to give it an 8.5 because it's such a good thing. But for Dune Part 2, I'm going to give it a 10. Okay. I think that it surpassed quite a bit, even though there are nitpicks here. But that's actually, compared to my nitpicking of other movies, it's very minimal. Okay. But I think that it's a 10 overall because I think it was well executed. And I think it is there's only these two movies, it is The Empire Strikes Back of Dune. That's what I think it's like.
Okay. Yeah, yes. I will agree to that because The Empire Strikes Back, as much as I like it, and ironically, it's the only one that George Lucas didn't direct.
Right. And also, I don't think that he personally did not write all of that screenplay. He had the ideas, but remember, he gave it to Lee Brackett. Okay. And then he gave it to Loris Kasdan, who are two much better writers than he was. And even he has to admit, George Lucas admits that other writers can write better than he can. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so my ratings for this movie, I can't remember I guess I'll go into my older videos and put in what I put for a rating for the first movie. Sure. But the second one, objectively, I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
But personally, 5 out of 10.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Because of all the problems I've mentioned, nihilism, being the first thing. Yeah, definitely. All right, thanks, Art, for showing up. This is fantastic.
Pascal, it was great talking to you about Dune Part 2. It was a good movie.
Okay, thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.